Okay, so this is the beginning of lesson 9, and at this point what we need to do is we need to start creating our dependent variables. Notice in the previous lesson I had to go back and create another variable to account for an error I made. And so now we're ready to create a dependent variable and do some descriptive statistics, which will be in a table for your assignment. And also we can do some initial plots. I'm not sure if we'll get all the way to the plots in this video, but we'll get started. An important thing at this stage is now we're going to be creating tables and figures that we'll want to use that information later. So it really becomes important that we save the output file. So before I even get started, all I've done is open this particular file. I'm just going to save this to my desktop. And I'm going to call this pols6123 project 1 figures. And so we'll create a dependent variable, run a descriptive statistics, and do the plot. Okay. So let's minimize this. Don't click the red button and close it. We need to keep it open but minimized. In that last step, what I did is I went and created the number of stations reporting, the proper unit to act as the denominator for our dependent variable. So essentially we're going to just create the number of incidents and we're going to express that as a ratio for the number of stations that reported. We're going to go to transform, compute variable, and we're going to say I'm just going to call it incident per station, and I'm going to add incidents and a divided sign, backslash sign, and number of stations reporting, not the number of stations. Good. That's going to run, it's going to execute, and minimize this, the output file. Let's go to the variable view down here. Incident per station. Let's click on that and let's move it up into a position where we can see it relative to the other variables. And so let's go up here all the way to the top. We did number of incidents, number of stations, number of reporting stations, and this is going to be our dependent variable. Okay, good. Let's click that down to 1 and let's see what we got. So we have a range anywhere from 73, looks like 100. It gets into high numbers, obviously stations, so its size is going to differ, but it's the probably the best unit of analysis. I don't think we could do per firefighter because that information is probably not accurate. But if we wanted to, we could always try it and see if it worked better. The other thing that I want to do is, because we're not going to just do an ordinary least squares regression, we're going to do a weighted least squares regression. We're going to weight on the number of stations that actually reported. So I need to calculate that weight value. So I'm going to do the exact same thing I did before. Transform, compute variable. Let's just reset this. I'm going to call this weight. And all I'm going to do here is the department's reporting. And I'm going to divide that by the number of departments. Okay. It should give us just a ratio. Minimize again. We'll go to variable view. Let's express this as 2 decimals. That's fine. And let's move that all the way to the very top. Good. So we have departments reporting, and we have the weight there. So we have some of these that all the departments reported and others that were not so good. So we're going to use that in a second regression to see if we can kind of take some of the error and the heteroscedasticity out of the regression. Very good. This is exactly where we need to be. Let's save this. I'm going to save this as a new one. Let's save this as county level 4, version 4. And I'm going to, as we go forward, we'll do kind of iterated numbers on that version. So we're all good here. Now what we need to do is we need to run some simple descriptive statistics. We have a table that we need to complete for your assignment. And then we're going to run a figure as well. Now, part of the assignment, you'll need to create a table of descriptive statistics. And so in order to do that, we're going to do we're going to include the dependent variable, that weight value I just did, and then the two independent variables that are going to act as the baseline for your models. You will be creating two additional independent variables on the basis of either the ones in here, or if you want to get a little extra credit, you can go out and find your own and then at a county level and then test those. And so that's all explained in the instructions, but let's go ahead and quickly do a descriptive statistics. So let's go to Analyze Reports, Descriptive Statistics, under Descriptives. And all I'm interested in, let's start with the dependent variable first, the weighted values second, and then I had two variables that we were going to include. The first is this population per square mile. It's pop 060210, right? The other one that we're going to include is going to be a unit of it's going to be a housing structure, and so let's go up and find the housing one. It's HSG 096212. So it's right there. You'll obviously add the two independent variables that you either import or use from this county level data. But you're just going to simply click OK. Then you have your descriptive statistics. Oh, this is interesting. Because we have three stations that aren't importing, right? We have a descriptive statistics table that will be different, right? We have 50 observations on these two independent variables. We need to get around that. So there's one way that we can do it, and there's probably another as well, but let's do it a little bit more sophisticated way. Okay, so we're going to select on our dependent variable with numeric observations. We're going to get rid of the ones that are missing. So all we're going to do is select if. We're going to go down to that missing value functions again, and we're just going to say the number valid, and then we're going to put across there the dependent variable, so incidence per station. So essentially we're going to select the case if that dependent variable is valid. So continue, click OK, and that'll pull up the output. Let's go back down here and notice the three that didn't have an incidence reported, they're now no longer active. So if we run the data, we transform, or we go to Analyze Descriptive Statistics, and we run the descriptives, what will happen is we'll get a table now with 47 observations across, and that's what we want to do. We want to express only kind of a similar sample across our dependent and independent variables. Okay, that information needs to go into a table, so let me show you where that's located. If we go to our content folder for the project, the instructions are at the very top. The written assignment instructions for the PDF are at the very top. All the video ones are at the very bottom. We are going to work with this template, so let's download this. And I'm going to open it. And you see, I gave you kind of an outline of the project, the way that it needs to be turned in. Notice one thing here. When you're working in manuscript, I always end up putting these extra, the extra content in here with the paragraph markers, the tab markers, and everything else. As you're doing manuscripts and you're getting ready to send stuff out for review, you just need to start working in this format. You don't want extra spaces in there. You work with a lot of page limits, and so you want to make sure that everything works. So if you go through this document, you'll see things like section breaks. You can do section breaks by going to, let's see, probably layout. You can then click insert section break, right? And so wherever you have it. And then you can select on them and delete them, etc. But we work a lot like this. We also put all of our figures on kind of separate pages with section breaks between them. And then the table that we're going to work with, you're going to create a hypothesis table here. These are the different cell entries. Let me show you one thing on table layout. On table layout, we need to, let me see if I can figure out how to do this real quick. Hold on, I'm going to pause 1 second. Okay, I found it. One of the things with tables, when you click on a table, it'll bring up the table menu. It'll do this in Microsoft as well. And one of those options on the table menu is going to be grid lines. And so when this imported over, it didn't put in the grid lines, but it did. So I'm going to click on that grid lines thing, and it's going to put in here. So now you'll be able to see not only the returns, the spaces, but where the grid lines are, and then fill those out. That's valuable to have as well. That descriptive statistics that I just did, you're going to put in variable names in these in this particular column, and then you're going to include that minimum, maximum, mean, and standard deviation. When you do this, you need to do it in a way where the size is correct. And so I think, like for the one dependent variable we're working with, population per square mile, it ended up that we needed to divide that by 1,000. So let me show you how to do that very quickly. Okay, so we'll go back down, and let me go here. I'm going to transform compute a variable. I'm going to do P per square mile and 0. So here what all I'm going to do is I'm going to take that one entry that we had, it's the very bottom one, population 062. I'm going to divide that by 1,000. Okay. Yeah, so that gave us a slightly different measure. Let's go back. We still have everything selected properly. Let's analyze our descriptives. Excuse me, our descriptive statistics. And instead of that first one, let's put in that last one that we just created. And then move it up one. Okay. And then run that one. So there, what we have, we finally get the population. It's in that 0.10 to 11 range. That maximum value tells you they're all kind of fairly close, and so that makes your parameter sizes appropriate mostly. So when you look at when you get to the descriptives, make sure that they're all kind of in the same sort of ranges. When you have these really small, you get really small parameter sizes, and then that's annoying. Part of being professional is expressing the parameters in a reasonable unit or size. So very good. So just take this information and go to your table and input it in this area. Very good. Okay, so I'm running out of space on the YouTube video, but one final thing before I go to the next lesson, which will cover the plots and figures. The way to put in these kind of extra paragraph markers is to click on this particular, it looks like a paragraph marker is all it is, and you'll find it on one of those drop-down menus, and if you click that, it'll put it in there. The other thing is on these cell entries, the grids, right? So if I take these grids out, I put those in. Those are just in the, they're just in the software, right? If you printed this out, you would not see those grid lines, nor would you see the section break and everything else. The idea about working with the format is to get the format indicators visible whenever you're creating a manuscript, so that you can make sure that you have everything kind of all the paragraphs right, you don't have extra spaces, and that you can get as much text in the smallest amount of space as possible, because you are working with page limits on a lot of these journals. Okay, good. We'll go to the next lesson on figures.